Welcome back to Expand Your Mind, the podcast where we explore the fascinating figures and forgotten stories that shaped our world. I'm James.
And I'm Martha. It's great to have you with us.
Today, we're journeying back to the early 16th century, to the raw, chaotic, and incredibly rich world of New Spain, what we now know as Mexico. It's an era dominated by famous names like Hernán Cortés, a time of conquest, gold, and brutal tower struggles.
But we're not focusing on the famous conquistador today. Instead, we're delving into the life of a man who stood right at the center of the storm, a bureaucrat whose life was anything but boring. His name was Alonso de Estrada, and he carried a secret, or at least a very powerful claim.
That's right. Estrada claimed to be the illegitimate son of a king, specifically King Ferdinand II of Aragon, the very same Ferdinand who, with his wife Isabella, funded Christopher Columbus.
It's a bold claim, and it's one that defined his career and nearly cost him his life. So let's unpack the story of the man who went from royal treasurer to a central player in the violent birth of a new nation.
So, who was Alonso de Estrada? He was born in Spain around 1470. He wasn't a soldier or a swashbuckling adventurer in the traditional sense. He was an administrator, a numbers man. He arrived in New Spain in 1523, not long after the fall of the Aztec Empire.
And he arrived with a very important job. He was appointed by Emperor Charles V to be the royal treasurer. This meant his primary duty was to manage the finances of the new colony, and most importantly, to make sure the crown got its share of all the gold and treasure being discovered. This was called the Quinto Real, or the Royal Fifth. For every piece of gold found, every treasure seized, 1/5 of it belonged to the King of Spain. Estrada was the man sent to enforce that. You can imagine that didn't always make him popular with the conquistadors who were risking their lives for that wealth.
Exactly. And from the very beginning, his career was intertwined with this incredible rumor about his parentage. The story goes that he was the illegitimate son of King Ferdinand, born from a brief affair. While never officially proven, it was a claim Estrada himself believed and used to his advantage. It gave him an air of authority, a sense that he was more than just a colonial official.
It's a fascinating what if. If it were true, it would make him the half-brother of Catherine of Aragon, the first wife of England's King Henry VIII. He would have been royalty, hidden in plain sight.
Well, whether he was royal or not, his life was about to get very dramatic. In 1524, the governor of New Spain, Hernán Cortés, decided to lead a massive expedition south to Honduras to punish a rebellious subordinate.
And when he left, he needed someone to run the colony. So he created a kind of governing council. He left the government in the hands of 3 men, our guy, Alonso de Estrada, the treasurer, a man named Rodrigo de Albornoz, the comptroller, and a legal expert, Alonso de Suazo.
On paper, it was a stable plan, but New Spain was a powder keg of ambition and greed. As soon as Cortés was out of sight, the power vacuum he left behind exploded. 2 other officials, Gonzalo de Salazar and Pedro Almíndez Chirino, saw their chance.
They staged what was essentially a coup. They started spreading a rumor that Cortés and his entire expedition had been killed in the jungles of Honduras. With no way to verify the news, chaos erupted.
And Salar and Chirino moved swiftly. They accused Estrada and Albornoz of being disloyal to Cortés's memory, which is deeply ironic since they were the ones trying to usurp power. They had Estrada and Albornoz arrested and thrown in cages, parading them through the streets as a show of force.
It was pure political theater. They seized all of Cortés's property, his vast estates, and even forced his wife, Catalina Suarez, to dress in a widow's habit and hold a mock funeral. They were effectively erasing him from the picture to consolidate their own power.
Imagine being Estrada. One minute you're one of the three most powerful men in the colony, the next you're imprisoned, and the entire government has been overthrown by ruthless opportunists.
But the lie couldn't last forever. Eventually, an agent of Cortés managed to return to Mexico City and prove that the great conquistador was in fact alive. The public mood shifted instantly. The people stormed the palace, freed Estrada and Albornoz, and the would-be dictators, Gonzalo de Salazar and Pedro Almíndez Chirino, found themselves the ones in chains.
And in June of 1526, Cortés himself made his triumphant return to the capital. He took back control of the government, and for a moment, it seemed like order had been restored. But the crown, back in Spain, had heard all about the chaos and infighting. They were losing confidence in Cortés's ability to govern.
This is where the tables turn for Estrada. The Spanish crown decided to strip Cortés of his political power. He was ordered back to Spain to face charges related to his conduct. And who was appointed to take over as governor in his absence? Alonso de Estrada.
Now he was the man in charge. He governed, at first with one of Cortés's men, but soon consolidated power for himself. And he wasn't afraid to use it. He banished one of Cortés's allies and even entered into a major conflict with another famous conquistador, Pedro de Alvarado, the conqueror of the Maya.
And it's during this period we see a darker side to his administration. He authorized the branding of indigenous peoples as slaves. It's a grim reminder that these weren't just political squabbles. They had very real, very brutal consequences for the native population.
Estrada's time as the sole governor was short-lived, though. The constant instability in New Spain led the emperor to establish a new form of government, the First Audiencia. This was essentially a high court, a panel of judges, or oidores, who would govern collectively. It was meant to be a more stable, less military-focused government.
And because of his experience, Alonso de Estrada was named as one of the oidores on this First Audiencia in 1528. But the president of the Audiencia was a notoriously cruel and ambitious man named Nuño Beltrán Guzmán. And almost immediately, the two of them clashed.
This is where Estrada's claim to royal blood comes roaring back to the forefront. During a heated argument, Guzmán insulted Estrada's authority and his family. Estrada, filled with righteous anger, drew himself up and declared, and this is a near direct quote from the Chronicles, "Hold your tongue. You are speaking to a son of the King of Castile."
Can you imagine the shock in that room? To openly claim to be the king's son to the face of the most powerful man in the colony? It was an incredible act of defiance.
It was also an incredibly dangerous one. Guzmán, furious and perhaps threatened by the claim, immediately had Estrada arrested. The sources say Guzmán was actually preparing to have him executed for his insolence.
But the other members of the Audiencia, seeing how far Guzmán was going, intervened. They managed to prevent the execution and had Estrada released. But the event showed just how high the stakes were. Estrada's boldest claim had put his life on the line.
Estrada wouldn't live much longer after that confrontation. He died in 1530, right in the midst of these power struggles. He never saw the final outcome of the government he helped to shape.
But his family legacy continued. His widow, Marina Gutiérrez de la Caballeria, was a prominent figure and later remarried. And his daughter, Luisa de Estrada, married a conquistador who took part in the Vázquez de Coronado expedition, linking his family to the continued story of Spanish exploration in North America.
So, in the end, Alonso de Estrada's story is a microcosm of early New Spain. It's a tale of ambition, chaos, and the constant struggle for power in a world that was being built and torn apart at the same time.
And at the heart of it all is that one tantalizing question. Was he telling the truth? Was he really the son of King Ferdinand? We'll likely never know for sure. But it was a claim that powered his rise and nearly caused his fall. A bureaucrat with the secret blood of a king.
He's a perfect example of how the most compelling stories in history are often found not on the battlefield, but in the halls of power, whispered in secret and declared in defiance.
That's all the time we have for today on Expand Your Mind. We hope you enjoyed this look into the life of Alonso de Estrada.
We hope you enjoyed this look into the life of Alonso de Estrada. Join us next time as we uncover another hidden corner of history. Until then,